Hi everyone, if you like what I do, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and consider checking out my Patreon. Enjoy the video. Where warriors are forged and champions are made, some heroes are just doing what they must in order to protect the ones around them, for if they did not, then who would? Rarely are they able to simply return home after committing such deeds, however, and are cursed with the mantle which was forced upon them, destined to go to any lengths to continue protecting the ones who had come to rely on them, until such a time they would, God's willing, train the replacement, or more often than not, inevitably fall in glorious battle. By the lizards long ago, however, the terrain can be extremely dangerous. Right, time to die. After the long age of subjugation by the terrible outer god Nyarlathotep, it seemed as though Terraria was finally beginning to heal. The corruption still crept across the land, but it was a curse that communities had come to live with. But unbeknown to them, their great oppressor, having now decayed into the very earth upon which they stood, had beckoned to the stars, and now his call would be answered, as a blazing flame streaked across the sky and over the horizon. For a time, the people of Terraria were fearful of what this omen would bring with it, but as it became apparent that there was no immediate danger, the event would pass into memory, and their lives would continue as normal. Their apathy would be the death of them, however, for what they had witnessed had been the coming of Cthulhu, and deep within the ocean, he plotted and made ready for the time he would arise and consume the world. When the day finally came, the skies darkened, and a horrendous roar erupted from the oceans. Many would endeavour to stand before the Great One, but their rushed defence stood no chance against his might. Even the Great Queen of Light fell before Cthulhu, her radiance removed from the world and locked away in darkness. Even while the calamity grew ever closer, towns and villages continued on, convinced out of ignorance or simple denial that it would never reach them. That was except one young man who had been told tales of the sign in the sky while he was a child, and had feared its meaning ever since. While unassuming to look at, the man had trained himself in any number of skills, from how to wield a blade like the warriors of old, to gaining a knowledge of the outside world like none had possessed in an age. He even learnt of medicine and simple magics. The knowledge made him a font of wisdom for his village, a teacher almost, without a school for his students. He had not learnt all he had for the betterment of society though, but from an inexplicable fear of what only now approached. He studied survivors' reports of how Cthulhu had laid waste to their homes, and that no matter how much harm they inflicted upon him, he continued on, reconstituting damaged flesh as fast as it was lost. It was clear that this cosmic being was near enough unkillable, but not entirely impervious to harm. Taking what he had learned, the man devised a plan to stop the oncoming beast. The chances of it succeeding were slim, but when all else had failed, it may have been their only chance. When the great Cthulhu finally neared, the would-be hero rode out to meet him, having familiarized himself with the creature's tactics and engaged it in battle, where all others had engaged it directly, almost lining up to be slaughtered by the Great One. This single foe taunted Cthulhu, slicing it over and over, avoiding every strike levied at him. He didn't target perceived weak points, his aim not to kill the great beast, but over time parts fell away from Cthulhu, faster than he could regenerate, and after a long-fought battle, the Great One grew weak, as its muscles were sliced away, and the exhausted hero jumped on the chance, but there was little time, dissecting the beast and removing its still living organs so that they could not reconstitute. Soon enough the bloodied hero was swarmed by cheering onlookers, who continued the task of tearing the terror apart, but at last he could finally rest. The nightmare that had plagued his mind since childhood finally defeated. There was still the question of what to do with the body parts, however. The old one may have been defeated, but ultimately he lived still, and given the chance would rise again. To this end his body parts were taken away and scattered across the land, buried deep in the earth so that they could not regenerate. Little did anyone realize though, that the power of Cthulhu stretched far beyond any foe death, and he would once more find a way to terrorize the world again. Retiring back to his village, a saviour to all the peoples of Terraria, the hero spent the next few years secluded away, desiring no adulation for his actions, but simply content in the knowledge that he had done what was necessary, and that the constant fear of what lay in the future had been laid to rest. As it was, however, his great quest remained unfinished, and he would be called back to action, as tales of an eerie, bloody creep which coated the land spread amongst the populace. It was said that something terrible haunted this crimson environment, an evil that gazed out into the world, craving vengeance. The story struck such fear into the villagers that it forced them out of their homes, leaving the hero's village a ghost town. Still though, he alone lingered, knowing in his heart the source of the scourge, and was determined to remain resolute in his defiance of it. Once more he donned his battered armour and ventured towards the tainted land no one else dared to approach. The frightful place was beyond any horror conjured by even the most terrible of nightmares, with living tissue coating every surface, blood pools threatening to consume foolish adventurers without a trace, and teeth-lined moors leading to something altogether worse. His mind focused and clear, the hero would descend through one of these openings, towards the cavernous crimson below, emerging into an atrium in its most literal sense, a vast heart-like structure, where he would find an entity that chilled him to the bone. It was the monstrous living brain of Cthulhu, buried many years prior, only to corrupt the earth itself into doing its bidding, infesting the ground with hearts that pumped Cthulhu's foul blood across the world, slowly transforming it into an abomination of colossal scale. The hero knew not if he could defeat the creature, but before he could even try, he was set upon by Cthulhu's pair of disembodied eyes, having escaped their own prison to serve their cerebral mastermind. Battling valiantly, the hero eventually managed to dispatch one of the twins and drive off the other, but by this point their master had fled. While he realised that in this dismembered state, Cthulhu could finally be killed, it was also apparent that the key to stopping the Crimson was too well defended, and another way must be found. To this end, the hero sought answers in the only place that held the sort of eldritch knowledge which could possibly hold a solution. The once seat of an outer god's power, now not but a squalid dungeon, and its bizarre lone occupant. While all others were quickly killed by the old man's skeletal master, the hero alone was permitted entry, the terror that haunted the dungeon having their own grievances with Cthulhu, and relishing the idea of thwarting the old one's machinations. Within the deepest recesses of the dungeon, the hero searched for answers, as the old man immortalized his deeds in painting, his encounter with Cthulhu's brain, the defeat of one of the twins. They would all come to adorn the damp walls. Eventually they came to learn the cosmic truth of how Cthulhu was nothing but a pawn in the greater schemes of yet another, more powerful deity, the Lord of the Moon. He learned how the Old One could bind great power to his own flesh in order to imprison it, a fate it would seem that the Radiant Queen had suffered, and that he had colluded with the creatures of the underworld to protect his flesh. The hero knew he must bind the Crimson's dark power just as Cthulhu had with the light, but he also knew that he must too make a sacrifice. Like the Great Old One had, the hero must give up a part of himself. If he was to end this, he must relinquish his soul. Guided by the old man, the hero learnt the art of soul extraction, how one's life force must be first bound to an effigy as a conduit for the soul, and in possession of his own voodoo doll, the hero descended through the great underground jungle. Emerging into the underworld, the hero was immediately set upon by the demons, but weary from awaiting Cthulhu's overdue return, they entertained the hero's tale of Cthulhu's true evil, and allowed him to attempt to bind the darkness. While the dark was indeed bound to the flesh, the great concentration of power within it caused it to writhe and awaken. Only through conducting the rite of soul transference was the hero able to satiate the abomination, and finally quell the threat of the Crimson. The demons, though, still did not trust what the hero had done, and demanded an assurance. Therefore, explaining its purpose, the hero left his own effigy with them, entrusting his life force to the demons of hell, ensuring that they had control over the creature he had created. Returning to the surface, the hero found that along with his soul, his strength and knowledge had been stripped from him, making him no better than any other frail villager. What's more was that he found that the evil of Cthulhu's Crimson had not been stopped, but merely slowed. Unable to continue the fight, the old hero vowed to find another to take up his mantle, guiding them in the ways of heroism, so that one day they may finally defeat the remains of Cthulhu. And while he knew this champion would inevitably have to travel to the underworld to defeat Cthulhu's flesh, breaking the demonic pact and destroying the effigy, ultimately leading to his death, it was all just another part of being the true hero the world needed. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, then please consider liking the video, subscribing and sharing it with your friends. If you want to support the channel even more, then head over to Patreon, become a channel member or buy some merch. Links are all down in the description. I hope you all have a great day and I'll see you next time.